Welcome to OneSoccer Today, right here on OneSoccer. Gareth Wheeler, Oliver Platt with you, and this off-season cavalcade of outstanding guests just continues on this program, and the latest to step up to tolerate both Ollie and more specifically me over the next 10-15 minutes. Congratulations, the new head coach, the new manager of CF Montreal. It's Hernán Losada joining us here on OneSoccer Today. Hernán, thank you so much for joining us. This is an exciting hire. Congratulations. I was thrilled to see when your name became associated with CF Montreal. What are your initial impressions since you landed in our great country and start working with a very exciting young team with a lot of very good Canadian players?
Hello, Gareth. Hello, Oliver. Thank you for having me in your show. It's a pleasure. Very happy to be here, to have this opportunity with CF Montreal. So I'm very excited to get started. We are in the second week of preseason, and we are looking forward for the first game, the 25th of February.
And then let's dive right into that roster because it is going to be a changed roster. I think it's fair to say with some of the players that you've seen leave. Obviously, Alistair, Johnston, Ismaël, Koné, Georgi Mihailovic, some very important players. With signings obviously still to come, what are your impressions of the players that you've actually inherited and are still at the club and taking part in preseason right now?
Yeah, I think we have a young group, that the base is still there. Like you mentioned, 3 players went to Europe, to other competitions. It's also something to be proud as a club and as an organization, to see your players develop, to see your players growing, making a step forward in their careers. So absolutely proud of that. And that also creates opportunities for other players. Maybe other young players or players from the academy can take the chance, or players who have been playing maybe less minutes and had less opportunities the last couple of seasons. So we will see if a few players are coming and joining us or not. But actually, I'm very happy with the group we already have right now.
So how do you put your stamp on these players in terms of what you expect from them? Like, how long does that process take, and what specifically do you look for?
Well, first of all, try to don't change too much from last season, but of course, add my blueprint, my philosophy, my style of play. That, to be honest with you, has a lot to do with the Montreal philosophy. That means trying to be competitive, play offensive football, try to be dominant whenever we can. We will be a pressing team, but when we have the ball, we will try to control the game by having possession. And well, let's try to build from everything that we already have right now. And time. Well, preseason is 7 weeks. Between 6-7 weeks, it's time enough for a coach to dictate and also to practice all the principles that, in this case, our staff wants to practice. And I'm sure we will be ready for the first game.
Wilfried Nancy, as coach last season, did have a very specific style of play. It got a lot of admiration around MLS for the way Montreal were playing their soccer last season. And I think it took the team a bit of time to learn as well. Alistair Johnston said that it was like learning to play football again because some of the different things that he was being asked to do. Do you see similarities in the way you like to play soccer compared to that? Do you think there will be any kind of transition at all as you kind of get to grips with these players here?
No, I don't think the transition will be too much or it will take too long. I have a few things that I would like to improve, not change, but improve. And it could be defensive-wise, try to be more solid, maybe to concede less goals. Offensive-wise, keep on creating the amount of scoring opportunities Montreal had last season. That was great. In transition moments, maybe especially when we lose the ball, try to be better organized, have good offensive markings to don't consider in counterattacks. But in general, that's, I think, one of the reasons why I got hired, because a lot of my principles have to do with the principles of Montreal, of CF Montreal. So the transition won't be and won't get any long.
It's interesting that you say that. Even hearing Olivier say like that the club wanted a manager who could come in and kind of fit the mold of the club, rather than the club going to completely change things, go in a different direction with the manager that they hired. So there seems to be alignment in terms of approach here. And you mentioned about improving and getting things better. How exactly do you do that? Because there's going to be some expectations, right? Because the team did so well last season. Do you feel like you're coming into a role with expectations? There's great fans, they're passionate in the city of Montreal as well. So just how do you feel about what you're walking into based upon maybe your previous experience in Major League Soccer?
Excited, and very thankful to come in to a successful team who has been doing great the last 2-3 years. And apart from the results, I think it's important to don't adapt to the opponent, to always play our style of play, to be faithful to the way we like to play, home or away, being a competitive. Sometimes win, sometimes lose, but I believe there are many ways to lose or to win the game, and for us it's important. The way we're going to do it has to be the CF Montreal way.
This is your second job in MLS now, and obviously you had the time with DC United. You've also coached in Belgium as well. What have you learned maybe about the differences between MLS versus Europe, and maybe the footballing culture over here as it compares to the European leagues that you coached and played in?
Yeah, absolutely, a lot. There are a lot of differences. Talking about the competition, all the rules that you have in MLS, all the traveling, when every time you play on the road. But well, for the rest, it's still football, and it's still 11v11. But of course, there is things that you need to consider, things that maybe you do in Europe that you can do here, or things that you do here that you can do in Europe. Not every competition is the same. They have different characteristics. MLS is a very offensive competition where most of the teams also invest in offensive players, and that makes that the games are so open and they are with so many goals. In Europe is, I think, a lot different in terms of thinking a lot more in a solid structure to stay always compact, maybe less entertainment, but a lot more related to a result. Another big difference is you have a relegation in Europe. Here you don't have. So the players or the teams that are not doing well, then you start to panicking. You have a lot of pressure to survive or to come out of that situation. Many different things, and of course, as a coach, you need to adapt and you need to be flexible and realize in what kind of competition you are, with what kind of roster, and from then on, of course, don't lose your values and never lose your principles. That's also important.
I mean, it's an incredibly I have a lot of praise for anyone that takes over and takes upon the role of manager, just because of everything that goes along with it. And now with some of the players leaving the club, perhaps it gives you an opportunity to kind of add to it, bring in players of your own mold, or of your own mind. Victor Wanyama is a player that returns. He's a player that you played with back in the day as well. But what else do you need to add to this group, specifically in terms of designated players that may help you take that next step to achieving success here in the early stages?
In terms of new players, of new additions, we have a very good group of people working on that. Olivier Renard is the head of that group, together with Vasily. We have people with a lot of football knowledge who's working on that. And it won't be an addition on my name, it's an addition on Montreal name. An addition that is the best for the future of the club. So coaches come in and go, but the philosophy and the principles of the club remain. So whatever we do has to be towards the future, and thinking what's the best for the franchise, what's the best for CF Montreal, and not what's the best for me.
So, I mean, every club is structured different. Would they come to you once they have a name and say, Hernán, how do you think that this player would work in your team? Because inevitably, you're the one that picks the team at the end of the day.
No, of course, I have an opinion. The whole staff get questions and we give a feedback. But again, I work with the players that I get, and we are all in good communication, and we are all in contact to make the final decision. But in this, it's only the head of recruitment and the person who makes those decisions.
I also want to ask you, this season's a little bit more complex because it's not just the MLS regular season. You're striving to make it to MLS Cup as well. Leagues Cup has now come into play in MLS. And of course, it's going to be your first time being the manager of a club, and the Canadian champion as well, a Canadian championship as well. What do you make of these different competitions? Do you need to balance your squad in a certain way? Are you deep enough to compete on all fronts? So what do you make of the challenges that this may present?
No, it's a very good question. I believe all competitions are important for us. We need to take all of them very seriously. Of course, the bigger your roster and the more competitive your roster, the more opportunities you have. In addition to that, you need to also take into consideration the Gold Cup games, the qualification games for internationals and all the national teams. That means it's a calendar full of games where players need to travel a lot, and of course that means opportunities for all the players. I always say, the moment you get the chance, be sure you're ready physically and mentally, because you never know when the opportunity will come. So the more games you have, the more opportunities for all the players in the roster.
And I've always thought that Montreal is a bit different to a lot of MLS cities, not just with the language element, obviously, but also in terms of the amount of attention that the team gets. And I saw a photograph of you with some reporters the other day, and there are a lot of reporters there, much more than you would see in a lot of places in Major League Soccer. How are you finding that aspect of Montreal, and maybe what have your first impressions been of the city on that side of it as well, with the passion they have for football?
No, I find Montreal a beautiful city. Sorry for the background.
I can turn off my screen as well. I'm happy
Still
to
virtual
do it.
these days.
It just turned off. Arcadio is working on that. So no, I have to say, my first impression, I really like the city. Very multicultural city. They made me feel very welcome. Very welcome. I have to say, everyone here at the club, and also via social media, I got a lot of messages willing to help me, willing to give me tips to get to know the city. I'm very surprised, very positive, surprisingly, about everything what I found, and extremely happy to be here. And hopefully I find time for myself to get to know the city.
Let's end on this. Argentine managers are a hot commodity today with Scaloni in Argentina winning I thought he did a wonderful job at the World Cup. You must have been flying. Do you want to share with us before my question how you celebrated Argentina winning the World Cup?
Definitely. I think it was 36 years ago that we won the last World Cup, especially for Messi. This was like the final trophy that he still didn't have. But Argentinians are so passionate about football, and for the country, this was beautiful. And I had the opportunity to be present during the final. I just traveled for that specific game. Nice. I knew this was going to be history, and that I needed to be present. So I did a big effort, having a flight of 20 hours from Buenos Aires to Doha. And then from Doha, I flew straight from there to Montreal to sign my contract. It was a crazy week, but I really enjoyed it, and it was worth it because, as I told you, for the country and for all the Argentinians, this was amazing. Yesterday was 1 month ago, and everyone was posting, this happened 1 month ago, time flies, and again, the clips and the goals and the images. So it's like, it never stops, and we are very proud of that.
Brilliant. It kind of led into my question, because I love how an Argentine coach is now being a manager in Canada, a future World Cup winner. We're keeping our fingers crossed. You have so many good young Canadian players, at the club, developing at the club. How important is it for them to really have, a say, a footprint on everything that happens at CF Montreal? And what do you make of Canadian soccer and how to fully take advantage of that?
Well, as you say, the World Cup in 4 years is organized with Canada, the United States, and Mexico. I was not surprised about the performances of the Canadian national team during the last World Cup. I think they did it great, especially the first game against Belgium. They should have always won that game. And the first half, they were really dominating and missing a lot of opportunities. You guys missed that penalty after 8 or 10 minutes. And like you say, there is a lot of talent in the national team, a lot of talent in different Canadian teams, not only with us, also with Vancouver, with Toronto. And I think it's incredibly positive to give the opportunities to young guys, to keep them, develop them. The ones that having great seasons can go very soon to Europe to develop even more. And I'm 200% sure that the Canadian soccer will grow very soon.
Well done. Keep that party going. Enjoy the preseason. Plenty of work to do, but we appreciate you having taking the time to spend with us today. And the best of luck for the upcoming season. Thank you so much, Hernán.